It's Wednesday, 10 p.m. Oystermouth Radio presents Book at Bedtime, Tales from Wales. Written and presented by Lazarus Carpenter and produced by Grant Eden. Welcome to Programme 41 of Series 4, Book at Bedtime, Tales from Wales. In part 1 of our programme tonight, Lazarus Carpenter reads Dissolution written by C.J. Sansom, Episode 5. In part 2, join us as we sit and listen to Lazarus Carpenter in conversation with Ann Brady, renowned author, poet and publisher. Prepare yourself a hot drink as we sit back and enjoy another story-packed program. Book at Bedtime, Tales from Wales, only on Oystermouth Radio.
Good evening and welcome to this week's edition of Book at Bedtime, Tales from Wales with me, your host, Lazarus Carpenter. In part 1 of the programme this evening, we have episode 5 of our featured novel, Dissolution, by C.J. Sansom and narrated by me. That's in a little while when we carry on listening to Matthew Shardlake's investigation of the mysterious murder at Scansea Monastery. In part 2 of the programme this week, our guest author is Ann Brady. Ann is a novelist, a poet and a publisher and specialises in children's and adult books. A fascinating interview coming up. Looking forward to chatting to Ann later on. So all that's left for now is for you to make yourself a nice hot drink, sit back in your most comfortable chair and listen to this week's edition of Book of Bedtime, Tales from Wales, only on Oystermouth Radio.
Are you a writer or content creator? Do you need a designer for a book cover? Does your work need outstanding digital illustrations? Jill Brooks could be just the creator you are looking for. With decades of experience, Jill will astound you with magic as she brings your projects to life. Take 5 minutes, drink a coffee and visit jillsplace.com. You won't be disappointed.
Listeners will remember Maggie Jenkins, author of Arrows in the Mist, our guest on Book at Bedtime, only last month. Just released and available from Amazon comes the long-awaited sequel to Arrows in the Mist, for your delectation, Bullets Through the Mist. Remember, you heard it here first, only on Book at Bedtime, Tales from Wales, Oystermouth Radio.
Dissolution, written by C.J. Sansom, narrated by Lazarus Carpenter. Episode 5. A fat man in the blue robe of a servant answered the prior's knock. He eyed us worriedly. "Urgent visitors for his lordship from the Vicar General. Is he here?" The servant bowed deeply. "That terrible killing." He crossed himself fervently. "We had no warning of your coming, sirs. Abbot Fabian is not back, though he is expected any time. But pray, come in." He ushered us into a wide hall, the panels brightly painted with hunting scenes. "Perhaps you would wait in the reception room," the prior suggested. "Where is Dr. Goodhaps?" "In his room upstairs." "Then we will see him first." The prior nodded to the servant, who led us up a broad staircase to the upper floor. The prior halted before a closed door and knocked loudly. There was a squeal from within. Then we heard a key turn and the door opened a crack. A thin face, topped with untidy white hair, peered out anxiously. "Prior Mortimus," the old man said in a squeaky voice, "why clout the door like that? You startled me." A sardonic smile flickered briefly across Mortimer's face. "Did I? Forgive me. You're safe now. Good doctor, Lord Cromwell has sent an emissary. a new commissioner. Dr. Goodhaps, I asked. Commissioner Matthew Shardlake. I have been sent in reply to your letter. I come from Lord Cromwell. The old man stared a moment, then opened the door, admitting us to a bedroom. It was well appointed, with a curtained four-post bed, fat cushions on the floor, and a window overlooking the busy courtyard. A pile of books lay on the floor, a tray containing a pitcher of wine and pewter cups bounced on top. A log fire burned in the grate, and Mark and I made for it at once, for we were both chilled to the bone. I turned to the prior, who stood in the doorway, eyeing us watchfully. Thank you, brother. Perhaps you could inform me when the abbot returns. He bowed and closed the door behind him. Lock the door, in our Saviour's name, the old man squeaked, wringing his hands. He made a sorry sight, with his white hair disarrayed and his black cleric's robe creased and stained. From his breath I gathered that he had already sampled the wine. The letter arrived, thank the Lord. I feared it would be intercepted. How many of you are there? Only we two. May I sit? I asked, lowering myself carefully onto the cushions. As they took my weight, the relief to my back was wonderful. Master Goodhaps noticed my disability for the first time. Then he looked at Mark, who was unbuckling his heavy sword. The boy, he's a swordsman. He can protect us? If need be. Are we likely to need protecting? In this place, sir, after what happened, we are surrounded by enemies, Master Shardlake. I saw he was terrified and smiled reassuringly. A nervous witness, like a nervous horse, needs to be soothed along. Calm yourself, sir. Now we are tired and would be grateful for a little of that wine while you tell us exactly what has happened here. Oh, sir, by Our Lady, the blood... I raised my hand. Start at the beginning, from your arrival. He poured his wine and sat down on the bed, running his fingers through his shock of white hair. I did not want to come here, he sighed. I have laboured hard in the vineyard at Cambridge, working for reform since the start, and I am too old for assignments like this. But Robin Singleton was my student once, and he asked me to help him try the surrender of this pestiferous house. He needed a canon lawyer, you see. I could not refuse a summons from the Vicar-General, he added resentfully. That is difficult, I agreed. So you arrived here, what, a week ago? Yes, a week ago. It was a hard ride. How did the negotiations proceed? Badly, sir, badly, as I knew they would. Singleton went blustering in, saying this was a decayed and sinful house, and they would be well advised to take the pensions he offered and surrender. But Abbot Fabian wasn't interested. He loves his life here too much, playing the country squire, lording it over the stewards and reeves. He's only the local ship chandler's son, you know. Goodhaps drained his cup and poured himself another. I could not blame the helpless old noddle all here alone for seeking succour in his pitcher. He's clever, Abbot Fabian. He knew there would be more forced closures than not after the Northern Rebellion. The commissioner told me to find something in my legal books to threaten him with. I told him he was wasting his time, but Robin Singleton was never any good as a scholar. He made me stop, you see, and his way by bluster, God rest him, he added, though as a good reformer he did not cross himself. What you say is true enough, I agreed, unless one can find other breaches of the law. Sodomy was spoken of, I hear, and theft, capital offences both. Goodhaps sighed. Oh, for once Lord Cromwell has the wrong notion. The local justice is a good reformer, but his reports of land sales at undervalue don't hold water. There is no evidence of anything improper in the accounts. And the talk of vice? Nothing. The abbot insists they have all reformed since his visitation. The last prior encouraged those vile practices, but he was removed together with a couple of the worst offenders, and that Scots brute put in. I emptied my cup, but forbore to ask for more. I was bone tired, and the wine and the warmth from the fire made me want to lie down and sleep, but I needed a clear head for some hours yet. How did you find the brothers? He shrugged. Like them all, lazy and content. They play cards and hunt. You'll have seen the places crawling with dogs, and skimp the services, but they observe the injunctions, have sermons in English, and don't have bawdy women walking around the place. That red-faced prior's a disciplinarian. He makes himself out as a supporter of Lord Cromwell's injunctions, but I trust none of them. The senior monks are a smooth, clever lot, but under the surface they're all full of the old heresies. They keep that to themselves, though, and except that Carthusian cripple, of course, and he's not part of the community. Ah, yes, Brother Jerome. We encountered him. Do you not know who he is? No. A relative of Queen Jane, God rest her. He refused the oath, but to have him executed like the other Carthusians would have been an embarrassment. They tortured him into swearing and then hid him away down here as a pensioner. Another relative is a big landowner hereabouts. I would have thought Lord Cromwell's office would have known he was here. I inclined my head. Papers get lost, I suppose, even in his office. The other monks don't like him because he insults them, calls them soft and lazy. He's not allowed to leave the precincts. No doubt Commissioner Singleton spoke to many of the monks to see what he could uncover. Some of those involved in the sodomy scandal would still be here. The tall one with the wild fair hair, perhaps, Mark interjected. Goodhap shrugged. Oh, him! Brother Gabriel, the sacrist. Yes, he was one. Looks quite normal, doesn't he? Big and tall. He has a wild look about him sometimes, though, and Commissioner Singleton pressed him, but they all say they're as pure as angels nowadays. He got me to do some interviews, question some of them about the detail of their lives, though I'm a scholar. I'm not trained for that sort of thing. I gather Commissioner Singleton did not make himself popular. I knew him, by the way. He had a fierce manner. Yes, his brusque ways never made him friends, not that he cared. Tell me, how did he die? The old man hunched his shoulders and seemed to shrink into himself. He had given up trying to pressurize the monks. He said to me that listing all the ways a monastery may break the canon law, scraping the bottom of the barrel. He spent most of his time looking through the accounts and the archives. He was getting anxious. He needed something for Lord Cromwell. I didn't see him much the last couple of days. He was busy going through the bursar's accounts, you see. What was he looking for? Any trouble he could find. As I said, he was scraping the bottom of the barrel. But he has some experience of these new Italian accounts where everything goes in twice. Yes, double entry. He knew his accounts then, if not much law. Yes, he sighed. That last night we had supper on our own as usual. Singleton appeared in a more cheerful mood. He said he was going to his room to look at some new book he prized out of the bursar. The bursar himself was away that night, the night it happened. Would the bursar be a fat little man with black eyes? We saw someone like that in the courtyard, arguing about money. That's him. Yes, that's him. Brother Edwig, arguing with the sacrist about the building schemes, I dare say. I like Brother Edwig. He's a practical man. Doesn't like spending money. We could do with someone like him in my college. When it comes to a day-to-day running of the monastery, Prior Mortimus and Brother Edwig have control between them, and they run tight ships, don't you know?" He took another draught of wine. "What happened next?" "I worked for an hour, then said my prayers and went to bed." "And slept?" "Yes, I woke suddenly at about 5. There was a commotion outside, and then a great bang on the door, just like the prior made just now." He shuddered. "The abbot and a dozen monks were outside. The abbot looked shocked, startled out of his wits. He told me the commissioner was dead. Someone had killed him. I must come at once. I dressed and I went down with them. It was all so confusing. Everyone was babbling about locked doors and blood, and I heard someone say it was God's vengeance. They found torches, and we went through the monks' quarters to the kitchens. It was so cold, all these endless dark passageways, monks and servants standing around in little huddles looking scared. And then they opened the door to the kitchen. Dear God! To my surprise, he quickly crossed himself. There was this smell of—" he gave a fractured laugh, "a butcher's shop. The room was full of candles. They put them on the long tables, the food cupboards, everywhere. I stood in something, and the prior pulled me to one side. When I lifted my boot, it was sticky, and there was a great pool of dark liquid on the floor. I didn't know what it was. Then I saw Robert Singleton lying in the middle of it, on his stomach, his robe all smeared. I knew there was something wrong, but my eyes could make no sense of it at first. Then I realized he had no head. I stared round, and then I saw it, his head, lying under the butter churn, glaring up at me. It was only then I realized the pool was blood." He closed his eyes. "Dear God, I was so frightened." He opened them again, emptied his cup, and reached once more for the bottle. But I covered it with my hand. "Enough for now, Dr. Goodhaps," I said gently. "Go on." Tears came into his eyes. "I thought they'd killed him. I thought it was an execution, and I was next. I looked at their faces. I looked to see which one was carrying an axe. They all looked so grim. That Carthusian was there, smiling horribly, and he called out, 'Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord.'" "He said that, did he?" "Yes," the abbot snapped. "Be quiet," and then came over to me. "Master Goodhaps," he said, "you must tell us what to do," and then I realized they were all as frightened as I. "Might I say something?" Mark ventured. I nodded. "That Carthusian couldn't have struck someone's head off. It would take strength and balance." "Yes, it would," I nodded. "You're quite right." I returned to the old man. "What did you say to the abbot?" "He said we should consult the civil authorities, but I knew Master Cromwell should be told first. I knew there would be political implications. The abbot said that the gatekeeper, old Budge, had reported meeting Singleton on his night rounds not an hour before. He told Budge he was on his way to meet one of the monks." "At that time, did he say whom?" "No, Singleton sent him away with a flea in his ear, apparently." "I see. What then?" "I ordered all the monks to strict silence. I said no letters should leave this place without my approval, and sent my letter out via the village postboy." "You did well, Master Goodhaps. Your thinking was quite right." "Thank you. He wiped his eyes with his sleeve. "I was sore afraid, sir. I came back here, and here is where I have stayed. I am sorry, Master Shardley. This has unmanned me. I should have made inquiries, but I am only a scholar." "Well, we are here now. Tell me, who found the body?" "The infirmarian, Brother Guy, that dark monk." He shuddered. "He said there was an old brother sick in the infirmary, and he came to get some milk from the kitchen. He has a key. He unlocked the outer door, then went up the little hall into the kitchen. When he opened the door and stepped into the pool of blood, he raised the alarm. So the kitchen is normally locked at night? He nodded. Yes, to stop the monks and servants helping themselves. The monks think of nothing but stuffing their bellies. You'll see how fat most of them are. So the murderer had a key, like the meeting the gatekeeper reported, that points to someone from inside the monastery. But you said in your letter that the church was desecrated, a relic stolen. Yes, we were all still standing in the kitchen when one of the monks brought news that he swallowed, that a cock had been sacrificed on the church altar. Later they found the relic of the penitent thief stolen too. The monks are saying some outsider came in to desecrate the church and steal the relic, encountered the commissioner as one of his late wanderings and killed him. But how would an outsider have entered the kitchen? He shrugged. Bribed a servant to make a copy of the key, perhaps. And that's what the abbot thinks, though the monk is the only servant with the key. What about the relic? Was it valuable? That horrible thing? A hand nailed to a piece of wood. It was in a big gold casket set with stones. And they were real emeralds, I believe. It is believed to cure broken or twisted bones, but it's just another fake to gull the foolish. For a moment his voice rose with the reformer's ardour. The monks are more upset about the relic than about Singleton's murder. What do you think? I asked. Who do you think could have done this? I don't know what to think. The monks talk of devil worshippers breaking in to steal the relic, but they hate us. You can feel it in the very air. Sir, now you are here, may I go home? Not just yet. Soon, perhaps. At least I will have you and the boy here. There was a knock at the door, and the servant poked his head in. The abbot has returned, sir. Very well. Mark, help me up. I am stiff. He aided me to my feet, and I brushed myself down. Thank you, Dr. Goodhaps. We may talk again later. By the way, what happened to the account books the commissioner was studying? The bursar took them back. The old man shook his white poll. How did it come to this? All I wanted to see was reform of the church. How has it come to a world where these things happen? Rebellion, treason, murder. Sometimes I wonder if there's any way through it all. There is a way, at least through the mysteries men make, I said firmly. That I believe. Come, Mark, let us go and meet the good Lord Abbot.
Now on general release and available from LazarusCarpenterAuthor.com. Only £10.99, including postage and packing. The story of Craig E. Noss, Rock of the Night, Walls Have Ears, 1843 to 1877, Volume 1. Why not tune in to Showboat Television Online, Roku or Amazon Fire and watch Whisperings of Craig E. Noss, produced by John Rolls and based on the books by Lazarus Carpenter. A journey into the paranormal, only on Showboat Television. Join us next week for episode 6 of Dissolution by C.J. Sansom as we follow Matthew Shardlake deep into the mysteries of Scansea Monastery. In a moment, join us for part 2 of our program as we sit back and listen to Lazarus Carpenter in conversation with author, poet, mentor and publisher, Ann Brady. Welcome, and good evening. If you have just joined us, to book at Bedtime, Tales from Wales, only on Oystermouth Radio. Artist and Makers Emporium at Craig E. Noss Country Park. is a small haven of paintings, glasswork, pottery, postcards, arts and crafts, made by artisans of the Swansea Valley. Open 7 days every week from 10:30 until 4:30. Why not drop in for a browse? Something for everybody, from small gifts to large presents. Only at Artist and Makers Emporium, Craig E. Noss Country Park. Type in SA91GL to your sat nav. See you there.
Cosmo Golightly leaves the Swansea Valley in 81 with vision to become a soldier. Hands Off My Privates is a hysterical tale written by Mark Hopton from Ystradgunlais as he joins the army and enters basic training. This book has all the ingredients for a bestseller: humor, romance, love, hatred, but most of all interwoven in a tale well told. Available on Amazon. Hands Off My Privates by Mark Hopton.
Dracula. The thin line between fact, fiction, fantasy and imagination can be slim indeed, especially when a person wants to believe something is real. No one is more aware of this than I. You may feel, as I do, the dread of the mighty sea, so much so that I will not swim in it. Feel also Dracula's dread of the ocean and his fear of the journey to England as he, or is it I, am tossed around in the flimsy wooden boat. I feel myself, rather than him, being watched by the blood-eyed eyes of the ship's dog, always alert for signs of panic. But I too feel the hidden fear of the greatness of the sea and the sudden lurch as we are washed into it. Time passes. A vague awareness of the red eyes of the dog overpowers me as he comes closer, ever closer and more menacing. The feeling, though not the pain, as he sinks his teeth into my neck. Then again that dreamlike state as a sense of deep sleep sweeps over me. Am I really on that sandy shore, feeling the small waves lapping at my clothes, rolling me gently ever onwards towards the shadow of the red-eyed dog who eventually stands over me like a four-legged Seminole? Many things have been written about Bram Stoker's Dracula, and no doubt much more is still to follow. As I don my Dracula outfit to attend some local function, I feel strongly about the part I am about to play. Why don't you come with me now into that twilight world, the one that is both past and present at the same time?
Well, good evening if you've just joined us, and welcome to Book of Bedtime, Tales from Wales, Oyster Mouth Radio this evening. We've just been listening to the first reading from our guest author today, Ann Brady. Hi, Ann, and welcome to the programme.
Hello, thank you very much. Thank you for me being here.
It's good to have you on the programme. I mean, we don't actually know each other really. I mean, I know a bit about you because I've done a bit of research, and also we had Sean on the programme recently, who was somebody who you published for, wasn't he? So let's start by Ann Brady. Who are you?
Who am I? A Yorkshire lass for a start, living in Wales. I don't know. I suppose I'm a bit of everything. I started off, well, about nearly 40 years ago in writing, but I started in, how can I term it? I started blogging before blogging became the word or the thing. What happened was I was in the sports and fitness industry and I developed a website. I didn't create it myself. I designed it. I knew what I wanted. And I worked with two Russian guys, believe it or not. And they developed it. They created what was absolutely fantastic. And it took off better than I thought it would. So there I was selling fitness equipment, but I wanted it to be different. So I started researching why we should be healthy, what we should eat, why we should exercise. And I started writing about it. And that seemed to be something nobody else was doing at the time. So as I said, I was blogging on the website, and it attracted quite a lot of attention from people I never expected. I ended up winning 3 awards from the, now let me get this right, International Association of Master Web Designers and Creators, which is based in America. I was the only one in the UK who actually got it at that time. I got it 3 times for design, creativity, and content. And we were selling equipment, but we were also advising, giving information. So we were offering home, commercial, for children, for disabled, and then some leisure equipment. Because nobody realizes when you play pool or snooker how much walking you actually do.
As an ex-snooker player, I can tell you how much walking I used to do.
And how much bending you do, and stretching.
Yeah.
And people weren't seeing that. They just saw a game. And I thought, this is, and it ended up, to cut a long story short, I ended up working with the military, because I was selling to the military. I ended up with people like Carol Vorderman, who was a very big name at that time, promoting the website. I didn't even ask her. I didn't even pay for her to do it. It just came out the blue. I was in national and international magazines, national newspapers. She's there promoting it. This is the website to go to teach you and to educate you and to buy stuff from. She didn't actually say buy stuff from, but she was sort of, indicating. I was included in A-level tutorial booklets on health and fitness. And I worked with Alpro Milk, which was, they just brought John Turode, who was a top Australian chef. He'd come to the UK, and I took a chance and I wrote to him and said, can I use John Turode's healthy recipes, please? I thought they'd say no, but, oh, yes, you've got to pay so much. Go ahead. And they let me do it. And I just put their little logo on the website, and it took off. I couldn't believe it. So they were. Yeah, I was a blogger.
It's interesting what you're saying, because very clearly, that kind of writing is descriptive, isn't it? You have to almost get inside the athlete's head to know exactly which parts of their body they're moving, etc., etc., etc. So it's quite a good introduction to writing, really. What happened after that?
Eventually, I sort of gave that up because I was coming up to retirement, and I'd always wanted to write a book. And I thought, I'm going to write a book. That's what I'm going to do. Because my current husband said to me, he said, if you give up your business, what are you going to do? And without thinking, I just flippantly said, I'm going to paint and I'm going to write a book. The problem was that the painting, I was basing on what I did in school. And I was good at painting in school. But a lot of time had gone since then. And but the writing, it just flowed. And I wrote an historical novel called Dear Friends, Letters from Abroad. And it was, I don't know, it took me 18 months. And I finally got it published. I got 2 awards for that. The downside was, I told my mother, I said, oh, by the way, I've got my book published. And being typical Yorkshire, she turned around and said, oh, that thing you were messing about with.
Nobody'll read it, look. Nobody'll read it. No,
talk about pricking your balloon.
Yeah.
But I thought, well, I won't tell you I got 2 awards for it. I just let it go.
Yeah, Yorkshire mothers, being a Yorkshireman myself as well, as you know, Yorkshire mothers have a tendency to make very, very, well, they put you bloody down, don't they, at the end of the day? Well, mine is doing it,
Yeah.
Like yours did for the sound of things as well. Yes, they burst the bubble, don't they?
Definitely.
So, you've got your first novel out there. You've won an award with it. Then what?
I started entering competitions. I like poetry. I like writing short stories. So I was entering different competitions, and then I started writing more. I thought, I was trying to find which genre I wanted to write. And because I like different types of stories, my reading has been very eclectic. I can read Asimov, and then I can read Mills and Boon. So anything, I can read any story. I think that's why I make a good reviewer and editor, because I can read anything. And so I entered a lot of competitions, and I won quite a few of those. And I wanted to do poetry as well. I think poetry is good for writers. If they can write a poem, it gives them some idea on how to make a sentence structure, and it helps. So I got into that. So then I started writing different books, and then I got into children's books. That's then what really took off. And I'd got young grandchildren, and so I was observing them. I like to people watch. I'm a people watching person. So I was watching how they behaved and the things they did and things they said. And I thought, if you teach children through picture books, but use animals instead. So I started writing the Little Friends series of books. And I wrote 3 books. Woodland Adventures, Garden and Farmyard Adventures. And they got published, but they weren't really the best they could be. And I moved to Wales. I met my husband, and I moved from Yorkshire down to Wales, and I met a publisher, and I happened to take him into him. And he looked at him and he said, the stories are good. He says, but your illustrations need updating. And he said, why don't you write 1 story per book and do a series of 6? Those 6 went into 18 books. So I've got 18 altogether.
In that particular series?
In the whole, yes. So the 3 sections, Woodland, Garden and Farmyard, I've got 18 books. I've probably got about another 30 stories still to publish.
Yeah,
but at the moment, I'm doing them in Welsh at the moment.
Oh, that's very well. Can you speak Welsh?
No.
You're having them translated?
I'm having them translated.
Yeah, I got a translator as well. I mean, I feel disgusted with myself. I do. I was interviewed for a job in Wales in 1989, and they said to me, would I be prepared to learn Welsh? I said, oh, absolutely. Of course I would. Yeah, I never had time. It's too busy working to learn the language. And here I am, nearly 40 years later. And I mean, a little bit, but I'm quite disgusted with myself that I don't speak Welsh. Because I spent 5 years in Spain and learned Spanish. So why didn't I learn Welsh? I suppose it's because English is still spoken so widely. It makes us feel very lazy. But it does give the translators work. That's the important thing.
That's the important thing.
So yes. I mean, you now you've got your own publishing house, haven't you? And you mentor and you do inspirational speaking. Here's a $64,000 question for you. When do you sleep?
I suffer with insomnia, so in a way I don't.
Well, that's
it's very strange. The mentoring came before the publishing, but then the publishing sort of followed very quickly.
Yeah.
What happened was, because I'd written the children's books, I think it was my youngest granddaughter, yes, she wrote a story called My Family, which was a bit of a tongue-in-cheek story about her family. So her mom, her sister, her aunt and uncle, and her 2 cousins, all based around witches and Dracula and various fairies, and it included me and my husband. And she wrote this lovely story, and I entered it in the Winchester University writing competition. She was 13 at the time. She got a commendation, and I thought, I'm going to publish this. So instead of it being a picture book in the normal sense, it's a book with pictures. So it's got like it'll have just small figures in it, or little mini scenes in it, and it's a brilliant book. I just thought I really liked, but it encouraged the others, 2 of the others. The eldest granddaughter, she suffered with, now let me sure I get this right, ASD, anxiety, stress, and depression. And it came about because she moved from the UK to go live in Australia. And she was suffering really bad. And I went down to be with her for about a month, spend time with her and talk to her. And I said to her, why don't you write about this? Because if you write about how you feel, particularly when stress, you get it out of your system. And she said to me, she says, actually, Grandma, I've kept a diary. I said, well, if you would like, send it to me and let's put a book together. A book that explains what you've been through and what you've been doing to get over it. Because if we publish that book, if it helps one person in this world not feel suicidal because she'd got to that stage, I said, you will have done something very few people will have achieved. You will have saved a life. And she sort of thought about it. I think I spent 2.5 years on Facebook every day, talking to her for 2.5 years. We'd have 2.5 hours just typing away on Facebook, messaging each other, talking about it. And eventually she sent it me. And I went through it. I altered very little, but I added links between the dates and little things. And I sent it back to her. And I said, what do you think? She says, I like it. Yes. I said, are you willing to publish it? She said, yes. So I said, I need the foreword. I need the beginning. I need you to write something. And she wrote a really lovely thing. And part of it said, she said, you never know where you're going to get help from. And it can come from the most unlikely place. She said, and with me, that was my grandma. She said, because I would never have thought that she would understand me the way she does. She says, and I'm glad that she does.
Of course, with her being so young, she doesn't recognise or realise that grandmothers always know best.
Of course, yeah. And we published it. And it was taken up by, I think it's a psychology organisation in Australia. And they give the book out to teens of her age, of that as she was then, to help them understand that you can come through ASD with no problem.
I mean, it's really quite good that you've written in these multiple genres, because it's an ability, isn't it? I mean, before I started writing novels and stuff, all the things I wrote were academic papers, but it's still writing. And we still have to explain ourselves, and we still have to describe what it is we're doing. And of course, that's what we do in a novel as well, isn't it, with our characters? Which book have you written that is your favourite? Have you got a favourite book, or do you like them all?
No. I just like writing.
Yeah.
I do poetry. I'm a member of a poetry group. I joined because an author friend of mine, she's a poet mainly, and she was starting this group. I said, oh, I'll join you. I said, I'm not sure how much poetry you'll get out of me because it's been a while since I've done it. And I don't always contribute, and then I'll catch up and send her a load, and she'll say, oh, you've been busy. you know. And I write weird poetry. As my husband says, I'm a weird person. And it's
Well, you're from Yorkshire, of course you're weird. I mean,
weird.
when you say you write weird stuff, what do you mean? Do you give me a definition of weird? Because to me, life's weird.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I listen to what others write, because we read them out, and I just think that's typical, nice, lovely poetry that's observant of general life. Me, I look at something a bit different. There was one about kissing. It was supposed to be an informational poem called Kissing. I think I sent you that, and it's about kissing frogs or something, and they're all on about kissing and what have you. And I've got a real twist at the end of it, and I don't think she expected the ending, so that sort of threw her. And
So that's what you mean by weird.
I throw in the unexpected.
Yeah. I like that. I mean, I think that one of the things that readers like to be challenged, don't they, at the end of the day? And I think it's something that a lot of authors don't consider. They think, oh, I'm going to write a story. It's my story. I don't care whether anybody likes it or not. I'm a little bit like that with some of my stories that I've written, because they're inside me and I want to get them out, and I want to publish them, because I think somebody somewhere, a little old man in Tibet, probably on top of a mountain, will read it and say, I'm going to put this on my shelf. And he might be the only one in the world that ever reads it, but at least somebody's read it. And I think that, for creatives like ourselves, whether we're poets, artists, writers, or whatever it's all about sharing, isn't it? It's all about wanting to give a part of ourselves, a part of our creativity to the rest of the universe, because we live in a creative universe at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And it could be argued that music, art, poetry, and writing are the greatest arts that we can share with each other. Would you agree with that?
I think anything where you create something, you can take a piece of paper, like, origami, and you could, is it origami? Have I got that right? Yeah. And you can create a bird. I don't think I could fold a bird.
But you could write about one.
I could write, I could describe. Yeah. And yes, when I go back to the painting and I thought about, I used to paint beautiful birds in watercolor. When I came to try and do it, I couldn't do it.
No.
But I could sit down and I could write in words. It became quite apparent when I did the Little Friends storybook. I reissued them as single books, and I got the illustrator and described what I wanted in the illustrations. The first set I did, I wasn't sure. So what I did was I put together a mock of what I wanted and just said, look, that's the basics, but I want you to take it away and do it in your style, because that's down to the illustrator. When it came to the second and third series, I just wrote a little mini paragraph. And I said, this is the story. This is what I envisage the scene to be. Now produce it. And I have to admit, I had two illustrators. The first set, I had one illustrator. The second two series, I had the same illustrator. And I said, just produce it from what I wrote in that one sentence. So in the second set, I wrote a full sentence and a little bit more. But in the last one, I just wrote words. Frog, whatever. That's it. And left it to her. And because she'd got the two previous sets and she'd worked on the middle one, and she'd got a copy of the first series anyway, and we were following through with some of the animals into the second and third set, she picked it up. And the illustrator can do that if they're a good illustrator.
Yeah, I agree with that. I work with two illustrators. My wife is an artist, and also I work with digital artist as well. And I think the biggest challenge that I gave to my wife was when I asked her to illustrate Pablo, the provider Pixie Picnic Passes Packed and Poacher Party, which is the title of the book, incidentally. It's obviously a children's story, which in itself was a challenge, but she rose to it, and it is a lovely little book. But the illustrations are incredible. The illustrations, they're so colourful and bright, and they leap off the page. And I mean, little kids want that, don't they? I mean, they need to be able to relate to the story through what they can see at the same time. And that is a good illustrator that can take your words. I mean, when I was writing my Crack Finance series, Debbie would read a chapter and then she would abstract the major theme from the chapter to do an illustration for each chapter, you know. And that's a hell of a skill, isn't it? You know, because
but the writer has to have that skill as well.
Yeah.
Because if the writer has managed to write the description, the scene, the feeling, the emotion, put everything into it that should be there. You know, you can't just say the man walked into the room and he was tall, dark and handsome. Now, there's got to be more about him than just that. You know, can't just say that. It's like looking at a famous, I don't know, Keanu Reeves. How do you describe Keanu Reeves, the film star? He's not just a tall, dark-haired, handsome guy. There's more to him than that. And it's the way he holds himself. It's his humility. It's the generosity of it. And it all shows in his body. You have to describe him in words. Choosing those words is very important. So, and it's the same in anything. It's the scenes that you write. It's the emotions. It's the actions.
Would you say, well, what do you prefer? You prefer writing for adults or for children, or don't you mind?
I just like writing.
Right. So it doesn't matter who you're writing for.
It don't matter.
As long as you're interested in the subject matter.
Yeah.
Yeah, which you have to be. But I suppose in a sense, with the initial background that you had about writing, for example, about sports and stuff like that, and the feelings and the emotions behind. Yeah.
In school, I was English was my thing. English, maths, and history were my three subjects.
Yeah.
But my family, I mean, I never read. I never had books when I was younger. I didn't get books till I left home. I used to adore TV. We had a TV when I was very young. I think we were the first person on the street to get a TV. I think watching films, watching musicals, all that I love dramas. And so you learn from all these things. You know, it isn't just about reading books. It's about observing. You've got to observe what goes on outside your own window.
Yeah, it's a very good point.
That's what I said about being a people person.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many people nowadays that walk around looking at the ground or looking at the screen. I notice when I'm out walking the dogs nowadays, you know, the amount of people I see out walking their dogs, and they're not taking a blind bit of notice about the dog because they're too busy looking at the screen on their telephone. You know, I mean, we're becoming rapidly a screen indulgent culture, aren't we? You know, and the world will just pass everybody by while they're busy looking at the screen. Tell me, do you have a particular time of day when you like writing, or can you sit down, write anytime?
Well, it depends what I'm doing. So if at the moment I'm running a workshop down in Australia, so I've had the first exercise. It incorporates the number of exercises, and you need the exercise back to me for me to judge it and send back my comments. And then it goes back and you start the next section because it's irrelevant. The first exercise is relevant to the next section of the workshop. I did it last year and it worked really well. I've done it a couple of times now. So, and I find that the comments I've had about it is that, yeah, this really got me thinking. And I said, that's the whole point. You've got to look outside the box. I've always looked outside the box.
Yes. Us in Yorkshire do, because we've got to look outside the box, because inside the box is bloody hacky. See, that's what it's about, isn't it?
But so, I just, it's the way I am. You know, I look at I read a magazine. So like I get the writing magazine, I get all different magazines. I'll even get the Saga magazine, believe it or not, and I'll read it and I'll think, now that'll make a good podcast. So I'll read it and then I'll sort, right, I'll have a think about it and I'll do my version of something and incorporate it and adapt it for writing. So it can be about something totally different, but I can adapt it into a writing thing. And you think it's totally different when you look at them, but the general basis of it is think about things. How can you adapt?
What you're doing is you're essentially promoting creation, aren't you? Which means that whoever your students might be that you're working with, they're constantly creating because you're teaching them how to think around the creative process, which is a lot harder than people think, isn't it?
Yeah. You see, I have sort of a couple of mantras. I worked with an American lady. She'd written a book. She was ready to publish, but she was unhappy about it. And just out of chance, I was on the website on Facebook, and I said, "Look, if you're not happy, do you want to chat?" And I said, "I'll send you a Zoom link. We'll have a chat. I'll give you 45 minutes free chat." And she said, "Okay." So we had this chat, and I said, "What's wrong with it?" She says, "I don't know. It just doesn't settle right." So I said, "Tell you what, send it to me and I'll read it." She says, "What will you charge?" I said, "I won't charge you anything." I said, "Because if you're not happy with something, there's something not right. Whoever's teaching you hasn't taught you the whole thing, or you're not there." And I read it and I went through it and I made comments and I said, "I don't want to disappoint you, but some of the things in it shouldn't be there. And there's things in that aren't in it that should be there." And I said, "Cut out certain things because you're duplicating it." So she went back, she sent it me back, she chopped 2/3 of it off. She'd gone from 152,000 to 60.
That's a lot.
50,000 words. And I went, wow. I said, "I know I said chop it, but I weren't expecting." She says, "No, I feel better." She says, "I've got your ideas. I know where I'm going." And she did it.
It's good to be working with people that listen, isn't it? Because I mean, I teach creative writing, and I mean it's a skill, and I always say to people, you need to write what's in your heart. You need to get it out. You need to write your soul when you write it. And I think that, I know for myself that whenever I'm creating a character, I have to become the character in order to create it.
Definitely.
Yeah, I'm pleased to hear you say that.
I told my husband, I said, if I start talking in my sleep and I mention a strange man's name, don't worry. It's either someone I'm writing about, someone I'm reading about, or someone I'm reviewing about.
Yeah. But not anyone that you're fantasizing about.
So his comment was quite comical, because he turned around and said, "Well, that's all right." He says, "I don't mind. But he says, as long as he's a butcher and you bring home some good steaks, that's all."
So you can write more or less any time. Do you have a favourite place? You've got a little office at home, or?
No. I write in my head a lot. So I'll be dog tired, I'll go to bed. And because I don't sleep well, suddenly I've been having an affair with this guy now for months. God, he's gorgeous.
So we'll be seeing that as a Mills and Boom before long.
But no, actually, it's an historic thing, and it's partly written. It is partly written, but partly. In fact, I've got three. I've got 3 novels that I need to finish.
That brings me on to the next question,
them.
really, which was what's next for Ann Brady?
I don't know. I think I'm just enjoying what I do. I like talking to people. I like talking about writing. As I said, I have a mantra. Writing has to be fun, fun, fun.
Yeah,
if it's not, forget it.
Yeah, absolutely.
This American lady, I made her get a piece of A4 paper and I said, right, in big letters across it, I want you to write fun, fun, fun.
Yeah.
And she said, what's that mean? I said, now go pin it on the wall over your desk or behind your desk. And she said, and every morning, look at it before you sit down and write. I said, and if you get stuck, look at it again. And if you're still stuck, go for a walk.
That's what I actually think writer's block is about personally. It's about you've stopped having fun with your characters. You've stopped having fun with the storyline. Because if one is doing as you're suggesting, and I agree with you 100%, that we have to be in a state of joy when we're doing this. Because then it comes out on the paper, doesn't it? It comes out in the story. I mean, if you're joyful when you're creating, whoever's reading it is going to be joyful when they're reading it because of the fact that you've managed to say exactly what it is you wanted to say in a fun way. Even the most serious of subjects can be fun, don't they?
This is why I record podcasts, because I think podcasts gives me an opportunity to say what I would tell people.
Well, you're a Yorkshire woman. You want a platform to have your words out there. That's what it's about. I know.
Of course.
Ann Brady, it's been a pleasure to have you on the programme this evening. We're going to listen to another reading from you in a little while when we finish. But I wonder if you could just share with the audience exactly where they can find your books and find out more about you, because obviously they want to know more now they've listened to you on Book at Bedtime.
Well, strangely enough, I've got a few websites, but my main one is Ann-Brady.co.uk. I do have Ann-Brady.co.uk. Yeah. No we. Yes. I do have dearfriendsbook.co.uk, and I have littlefriendsbooks.co.uk. So
littlefriendsbooks.co.uk. That's the children's site.
You can have been looking at these now, aren't you?
That's what we're here for.
I'm gonna have to look them up. Excuse me a minute.
No, that's all right.
Do you know, isn't it strange that you can never ever remember things? Bear with me a second. It's easier if I look them up. So I've got Ann-Brady.co. That's it. Ann-Brady.co.uk. I've got dearfriendsbook.co.uk, Little Friends Books, and I've got mentoringwriters.co.uk, and I've got penandinkdesigns.co.uk.
Goodness me, what a lot of websites.
I know, but I have to keep them separate because I sort of have little holes.
Well, we'll mention those for you again at the end of the programme, so listeners can write them down if they want to. Ann Brady, it's been a pleasure to have you as our guest on Book at Bedtime. I'm sure you'll be hearing from some of our listeners. So from me, Lazarus Carpenter, thank you and good night.
Thank you.
Same time. Self-portrait. I stare into the mirror and am shocked at what I see. Is that hair upon my head or just some bushy tree? The hair is down below my collar. I need to get it cut. My sideburns are now so long, ribbons in them I can put. As I look at my hair, my mind wanders far, and suddenly I burst into song. I'm singing like a country star. Is it Shania or Loretta Lynn, Dolly Tammy or perhaps Patsy Cline? Whoever it is who's vocalising, she's certainly singing out in rhyme. My eyes they clear and I focus in at the blue bush upon my nut. I shake my head and tell myself, girl, you really need to get a haircut.
Well, that's all for this week from Book of Bedtime, Tales from Wales. Big thank you to Ann Brady for a fascinating interview. And next week our guest author is Marilyn Gwynne Jones, who is a local author from the Gunlice area, and we'll be talking about her book Lost Identity. Also, we'll have episode 6 of Dissolution, the Matthew Shardlake novel. So, from me, Lazarus Carpenter, and Grant Eden, our producer, and everyone else in the studio, good night, God bless, sweet dreams.
Karen North is a gifted medium and channel, simply inspirational writing, The Teachings of White Feather, available only on Amazon, in paperback and audiobook, narrated by Lazarus Carpenter. See other works by Karen, simply inspirational speaking, a collection of teachings. Follow Karen's work on YouTube.
Introducing a new collector's series of storybooks for children from Lazarus Carpenter and beautifully illustrated by artist Jill Brooks. Book 1 in our Tales with Uncle Laz series, On the Road with Uncle Laz, short stories for long journeys. Book 2, Around the Fire with Uncle Laz, short stories for long nights. Book 3, Tales Under the Falling Leaves with Uncle Laz, short stories for shorter days. These books are beautifully presented hardbacks printed on quality paper, created to last a lifetime and beyond, ideal for birthdays and gifts. Available from lulu.com and lazaruscarpenterauthor.com. You have been listening to Book at Bedtime, Tales from Wales. This program was written and presented by Lazarus Carpenter and produced by Grant Eden. The program is repeated every Thursday at 3 a.m., Friday at 10 p.m. and Sunday at 3 p.m. Join us again next week on Wednesday at 10 p.m. for episode 6 of Dissolution by C.J. Sansom and Lazarus in conversation with guest author Marilyn Gwynne Jones. You can find more books written for children, young adults and adults by Lazarus Carpenter at lazaruscarpenterauthor.com. From all of us here in the studio, good night and sweet dreams.